Morning all, thank you for being here. Well, that's not creepy at all, standing next to the speaker. Okay, so asking for the unreasonable, getting out of the way. One of the most powerful things we can do as a leader is not do our people's jobs for them. We need to empower our people, not disempower them, but we often have a couple of odd ways of doing that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can empower our people, but also get the outcomes that we're looking for. Now, I will preface this with saying that there will be some people in this room to which this advice probably applies less than others. I deal a lot with organizations that perhaps aren't going great. Some of them are wonderful. Some of them are doing really well. They're wonderful organizations, great culture, all the rest of it. The problem with consulting, and I'm in professional services, is the ones that you really want to work with and who can afford you don't need you. So, and then there's a whole horrible, ugly iron triangle around the ones who can afford you being the ones that you maybe don't necessarily want to work with. So I get dealt a lot of, shall we say, interesting shaped organizations, a little bit dysfunctional here and there. They mean well, and points for effort. So this talk, though, is not about when things are going great. It's when things are going a little bit less great and what we can do as the most senior technologist in our organization to make things a little bit better. It's a little bit counterintuitive. So I hear this a lot, especially when we're going down the agile transformation path. Just figure out what works and do that. Well, the problem is that you're saying that to a bunch of people who have no idea what works, because if they had a really good idea of what works, they would be doing it. And then I wouldn't be there. So clearly, what you're doing is not working. Now, we can say to everyone, well, what you should do is try a whole bunch of random stuff and work it out from first principles. The problem is that, to Simon's point earlier, a lot of organizations run out of runway before they actually figure out what works. And the thing is, the reason that we are the most senior technologists in these organizations is because we've been around the block a couple of times, and we kind of have a bit of an idea about what works well and what doesn't. Maybe it's our job to share that, and maybe it's our job to share that in a way that's actually actionable by our people. Because most of the time when we say it, they just go, well, what do we do? Like, figure out, it's like who's been, like, back in teenage years, right? You go to a party, someone says, just dance. All right, who's been there? Just do what you want, right? I don't know what that is. Help me here. Give me something concrete. And so one of the first things we usually do when we walk into an organization is we try to define what good looks like. Now, there's a big problem there, because good looks like this. All right? Right. And that's nice, except if you know the origin of the comic, but it's also useless. I want my kidney back. Right. Rainbows and unicorns are wonderful, but our organization is never going to get there. Right? And by setting an unrealistic goal like that, we're not really doing anybody any good. Especially given that most of our organizations, good is different. Good is different shaped over here versus over there. There are some elements of good that are very common, but good is going to be different to a high churn product industry than it is to an enterprise line of business thing. It's going to be different to manufacturing. Good is going to have a lot of different characteristics. However, we do have a pretty good idea of what bad looks like, so much that we've got an emoji for it. Right? There are common elements of yuck. And when we see them, almost invariably, we will recognize them as unhealthy patterns. So to Dave's point, and I'm really glad that Dave actually said this, and thank you, that again, as a perhaps lapsed technologist, it's still very, very important for you to have at least some facility with technology, some facility with code. So what's wrong with that? We've got 5 lines of code here. What's wrong with it? Right, we don't have 5 lines of code here, do we? We have 1,000 lines of code. All right, and where is it? Oh, crap. We don't have 1,000 lines of code just in one controller. We've got 1,000 random lines of code in every single controller that extends this one. Now, don't do your people's jobs for them, right? As a techie, what's your inclination here? Where are you going to click on that picture? You were going to click on that plus button, weren't you? You're going to expand that, and you're going to say, what the hell's in that? No, stop. That's your engineer's jobs. Your responsibility is just to know that it exists, and then have a think about what that clues you into about the constraints that your company is operating under? Right? What do I know about my company's strategic capabilities based on symptoms like that? Now, that's only one symptom, right? 1,000 lines of code, random, probably terrible, really hard to test. Oh, gee, that might mean we have slow release cycles. Oh, gee, that might mean we might get beaten to market, right? Doesn't take all that much to figure out, well, if that's a recurring theme, we are in trouble. Tell me about this one. Now, that font might be a tiny bit hard to read at the back, but this is our build monitor. Right, where did your eyes go? All right, it's supposed to be red. CSS color is red. Projector is failing me. Where, however, is the biggest tell that we have a problem? 15 months ago. Well done, sir. All right. And what is that? Flagship master, green. So it's sweet, right? Except that we last built it 15 months back. Can we ship today? We could have shipped 15 months ago. We might have shipped 15 months ago. Who knows? Right. So who wants to bet me a coffee that we can ship right now? Who wants to bet me a company that we can ship right now if we discover, for instance, we've got a really nasty GDPR violation, or the EU is getting its antitrust kicking boots on again? Right? Who wants to bet me an entire chunk of serious revenue that we can fix that when we need to? Right? Not always the thing. And just for the sake, what even is this? I didn't even need to anonymize this code. I just need to shrink it so far that it could fit on a page that you actually can't tell what any of the letters are. But this is real code I've encountered in real places. You know, I have changed names where it's appropriate. But now, again, as a senior technologist, you're going to look at that and you're going to go, what's in that? Right? But as a strategist, with your at least medium-term hat on, you don't care what's in that. You care that it exists. And it exists, the fact that it exists is a problem, and it's a tell. It's a smell, and that one's a bad smell. There are plenty of others. I'm sure we can go through the whole litany of terrible engineering discoveries we've made, but just a few clues to keep in mind. So we've found some bad. And this is where, especially a new leader, a new head of engineering, a new VP of engineering, a new CTO, whatever, is going to be very sorely tempted to disempower their team by trying to fix those things, or at least trying to dig into them a little bit more. Now, you can do that if you want, but it's kind of not what you're being paid to do. You've already got people who are being paid to do this, and they've probably got opinions about it. So why don't we ask them? Right. Our concern, though, is what do these symptoms tell us about things that we can't do as an organization? Right. And this leads us to what we actually want to ask our people to do. First things first, though, are our engineers dumb? Right, we see that code. We see that code. Which idiot wrote this? Who's ever heard that before? All right. And then found out that it was yourself. Right. I was in a very expensive company's boardroom with a very, very expensive senior executive team, and they were actually demanding to look at code. They had had a multi-billion-dollar project failure. It was really not going very well at all, and they were demanding to look at code. That's a very, very severe exception case. That's not the norm. Unfortunately, the response of one of the very senior execs there was to say, who wrote that code? I want that person fired. Get them out of my building now. We had to ask which building. It was that big. All right. I'm going to make the assumption, though, that our engineers aren't all a pack of clueless morons. If they are, that's my fault. Because who hired them? Or who hired people who hired them? Now, maybe that's the case, but I'm going to make the fairly uncontroversial assumption that the engineers aren't all stupid. So, why are they doing things that don't seem to make sense? Well, pretty much there's only one reason for that, which is that they are acting rationally within the set of constraints that they have. Right? They are doing sensible things. Anybody know who Norm Kurth is? Anybody not know who Norm Kurth is? One hand goes up, two. All right. One knows his history. Thank you, Dave. All right. Has everybody gone to an Agile with capital A retrospective and chanted the prime directive? All right. One, Agile with a capital A is wrong. Two, know who wrote it. All right. So Norm Kurth's basically saying, look, regardless of what we learn, regardless of what we uncover, we truly believe that the people who are making these decisions did the best with what they could at the time. So go and read it. It's useful. Are there constraints that are making them do silly things? And who creates those constraints?
The business.
Are we the baddies? Are we making our engineers do stupid things? And it's really easy to say, well, stupid people. Oh, all right. So let's think about what constraints we're putting them under and why. And let's figure out how to figure out what those constraints are. So when I say ask for unreasonable things, what do I mean by unreasonable? And why does it sound unreasonable to ask for these things? Well, what I'd like to start with is, I blogged about this, oh crikey, half a decade ago. Fix what you know is broken. Right? If you have a dumpster fire, for instance, put it out. Right? You don't have to have a 5-year plan in order to know that this thing right now is on fire, and that's really not great. Remember I was talking about, some companies are wonderful, they're just not the ones that I work with. Most of the companies that I work with tend to have a dumpster fire, or 6. Right? And most of them also have a strategic plan. They have a 2-year plan for this, and a 3-year plan for that, and a 5-year plan for this, and does any of the plans encompass putting out the dumpster fire? Usually not. Right? That's just supposed to happen. And again, in a non-dysfunctional organization, the dumpster fires, 1, would be put out really fast, 2, probably wouldn't happen at least to that severity in the first place. But nonetheless, we've got a dumpster fire, let's put it out. So let's have a look at some of the really common complaints. The first one is we're too slow to respond to changing market conditions. Now, who's never heard this before? Right? Everybody, and that's the whole fundamental pillar of wanting to be agile, right? The market keeps beating us. Our competitors keep doing smarter things than we do, or we had that idea 5 years ago. Well, that's nice, but they shipped it and you still haven't. Right? So we can't get to market, and we're really struggling. Now, most of the time, there's a whole lot of strategy involved in figuring that out, but let's actually look at some of the root causes. When we've seen some of the symptoms that we saw earlier, well, maybe we can draw a little bit of a link between poor engineering practices and strategic outcomes because we can't change direction fast enough. So one of the things we might do, and again, we would discuss this with our head of engineering, or if we are the head of engineering, we would discuss this with our CTO and vice versa, is we would set a very, very clear goal to fix some of the fundamental issues. Now, this is not the only thing that we need to do, but for our engineering teams, this is really important. Right? This needs to come from the people who have at least temporary access to the money who can set these priorities. And we're going to say something fairly blunt, which is we're going to release a new build every day. No exceptions. And cue tantrum. We can't do that. That's ridiculous. We have an 18-month release cycle. We don't even know how. Good. Good. Now you're starting to explain to me why you can't do these things that we regard as fundamental pillars of engineering. All right? I'm going to set the goal, and I want you to tell me why we can't do that. I was chatting about this with a colleague the other week. And he said to me, I totally get it. This is exactly what I was at this company, and the CTO came in and he said, you've got just as many testers as you have software engineers. This is terrible. And we can't get products to market. It's taking forever to get products to market. Right? We have terrible numbers of testers and we have horrible software quality, and this is a really, really big problem. Right? So the edict was issued that we would have 1 tester to 5 engineers, and that was that. And the exec got his people into the room and he said, look, this is what's going to happen. I want you to tell me 1, why it can't be done, and 2, you're going to do it in 90 days regardless. If you don't do it in 90 days, I'm just going to come through with a pen and a ruler and rule people off your stuffing list. Right? You figure it out. Right? And so they did. Some of the leaders failed. Some of the division heads completely failed. And true to promise, the ruler and the pen came out and just arbitrarily names got ruled off the list. However, most of the departments discovered, you know what? We're actually having valuable humans do meat robot kind of tasks. And these people are a whole lot smarter than that, and we're just constraining them and sticking them in a box. Right? We are giving humans a click script. And then we get grumpy when they're slow at following it. You know what? Robots are really cheap. We can get more of them. Maybe we can repurpose some of our testers into quality engineers, or maybe just create software engineers. We can invest in training for some of them. The ones who genuinely want to follow a click script probably start questioning your career aspirations, given that it's 2018. But the ones who genuinely care about software quality, maybe we can restructure them. So some of them just went through and made people redundant. The more sensible ones actually retrained, reskilled, all the rest of it, and then incorporated a lot of those people into their software delivery teams. Guess who was winning? Robots are cheap. All right. We have too many outages, and our customers are losing trust in us. All right. Now, this is a big problem, right? This is, have to front up to the market, to the press release, cameras in my face. I'm not going to have a good day here no matter what I say and no matter how I spin this because we've just fallen over again. Has everybody had that experience? Who wants that experience? Never, ever, ever again? It's pretty uncomfortable, isn't it? Right? It's bad enough when you just have to fess up to internal customers for an enterprise line of business app, but when you've got a public, retail-facing app and you've had a public outage, that's not a good place to be. So, what if we were to say, delivery teams are on call? They are the primary point of call for when things go pear-shaped. Not only that, but the people who make the silly decisions about what the delivery teams are going to work on are also going to be part of the on-call roster. Right? If you as the product owner make a silly call about, oh yeah, we really should fix this security breach, but no one knows about it yet, so, right. No, not okay. Right? We make the people who make the decisions accountable for the outcome of those decisions. Right? Now, again, this isn't the only thing that you would do for that accountability, but it is a concrete step that you can take. It is simple, it is easy, it's just a little bit of a stretch for your teams because, of course, cue next tantrum, I don't want to carry a phone with me when I'm at the beach. I don't want to carry a phone, I don't want to carry a phone with me, and if things break on Christmas Day, I'm going to be really upset and have to get dragged. Newsflash, people use your software outside of business hours. Who knew? I mean, maybe again, maybe not your timesheet reporting software if no one's at work over Christmas, but people want to do a whole lot of stuff using the interwebs over Christmas, and someone has to be confident that that's working. So what that's likely to do, though, is it's likely to change your organization's engineering practices. It's likely to make them focus more on the things that you care about from a strategic perspective, which is, we don't want the embarrassing failures. We don't want the outages during major sporting event or during the back-to-school sales or whatever. We don't want this to be awkward, and if it's awkward, we're going to share it around. This one, I don't necessarily want to go too much into that one, other than to say that infrastructure as code is really a thing. You should probably be asking your people why you're not doing it already if you're not. But again, it's one of those things where we can say, look, we know this is a good engineering practice. Why aren't you doing it? Are you not doing it because you are incompetent? Are you not doing it because you are poorly funded? Is it sensibly on your roadmap and we just haven't gotten there yet? In the case of startup land, that's an eminently feasible response. Eminently sensible. No, we value it, we understand how much we value it, we just don't value it yet. Right? But when we get to the point where we have to have rock solid confidence that every release that goes out is not going to break these core capabilities that right now we haven't even built yet, we've just sold to the investors, right? Then we care about investing in that particular capability. Sandpits are kind of cool. Incidentally, who's encountered a enterprise-grade sandpit, like hand-curated production? Yeah? Hand-curated test environments? Yeah, aren't they wonderful? Right? I'm sure these kids love this sandpit, right? It's unique to them. That's the problem. As a kid, you want a unique sandpit because it's your own special place. But do you know what a better sandpit is? That one. Do you know why? Because they cost $150 and you can buy a bunch of them. Right? When we want repeatability, we want repeatable, commoditized sandpits. And that's another thing that we can say. We can say, look, I've inherited this stodgy old enterprise where we've got this site core CMS and it hasn't been rolled out in 6 months. I'm triggering people's PTSD here, I'm sorry. And we haven't shipped it in 6 months and we're a little bit afraid of shipping it because we don't quite know what will happen. Okay, so from an exec perspective, I don't care about the tech. From the exec perspective, I care about the risk. My responsibility is to manage the risk. The first step in managing the risk is understanding, one, how likely the failure is, and two, what the ramifications of that are going to be. And if the answer to either of those questions is we don't know, right, then that's a problem. Right? Here is something that I can ask people to do that will give us that information. Now, it may well be that that's too expensive an investment for the value of that information, or it may not. That's a value judgment that you make. But either way, your responsibility is to quantify the risk, quantify the downside, then make a decision. If you ask people to do that, what are they going to say? They're going to say, we can't do that, right? Because it's hard and we've never done it here before. And you then say, but why? Why can't you do that? Tell me the other things about our organization that prevent you from doing those things, because one of those other things might really terrify me. One of those other things might give me a clue to structural failures within the organization. Right? I don't care that site core code is yuck. Right? I care that we're constrained in making changes to our core platform that means we can't bring new products to market, or that we are hemorrhaging customers and we can't even launch a new campaign to bring the product that the back-end people have already fixed and built, but we can't bring it to market because our CMS is constraining us. Right? That's what I need to care about. So by asking for these unreasonable things, I can then ask, but why can't I have it? This one's a scary one. If we were to assert, for instance, that every green build goes live, now I'll be a little bit more forgiving than that. Every green build in your master branch, which should pretty much be your only branch, but that's aside. Every one of those, trunkbaseddevelopment.com, do the thing, right? Every green build goes live. What's people's response? We can't do that. That's crazy talk. That's cowboy talk. No, what that tells me is that we don't trust the fact that we've given a build a color. What is green for? What is red for? Other than, oh, well, it's kind of all orangey anyway, right? That tells me that it's all red. Right? That tells me that we don't trust our regression suite. That tells me that we have a massive overinvestment in manual testing, or worse, that we just don't test our software and we rely on our customers to do it too. Right? That's going to have a great impact. And when I get to stand up at the board meeting at the end of the quarter and explain that that's why it all went to pot when we had this big event or whatever and everything fell on its backside, how long am I going to have a job for? Right? Now, it might not be that every green build actually goes live, but I want people to explain to me why it can't happen. Okay. Now, this is all very nice, but it's all just words, because everybody wants great engineering practices. Everyone wants great, functional capabilities within their organization. Everybody wants to have a strategy and be able to execute on it, and that's the bit that we're struggling with, but it's all just words unless there's actually skin in the game. So a couple of things we need to look at. One is we need to make the things that we want concrete, measurable, and objectively measurable at that. It can be objectively evaluated by a disinterested third party, i.e. a script or an auditor or someone else, or if it comes to it, a lawyer or a judge. Right? But we can say these people achieved that goal. Not only that, but if I'm asking you to do an unreasonable thing, I'm going to get the whole team pulling in that one direction by saying to you, your bonus depends on that. Now, as soon as we put money on the line, people's behavior changes. It's all very nice, but if you're going to pay your kids' school fees, then you really, really, really want to achieve this goal. Not only that, though, it is my job to help you achieve this goal. Right? This is a thing that I need from you. This is the thing that will result in my failure as a leader if we can't do. Your bonus is riding on it, but so is mine. Right? No part wins. Done but is not done. Right? And we don't be incentivizing individual team members. We succeed or fail as a team. Right? Everybody knows this. So as a senior leader, you almost want to revert a little bit to toddlerhood. Why can't I have this today? Right? I need you to deploy the latest build of our flagship app every day. We currently do it once every 18 months. That's terrible. Tell me why I can't have it now. Tell me all of the things wrong with our organization that prevent you from doing this sensible thing, and I will help get it fixed. Right? I need you to double the throughput of our flagship API, because, hey, we've actually done really well in customer acquisition, and now we've got a problem where if our rate of growth continues, then we're actually going to fall over quite embarrassingly come particular date next year. I know personally there's quite a number of people in this particular room who face that exact problem. I need you to halve our reliance on manual testing by the end of next quarter. Not because I care so much about manual testing, but because I care about the constraints that it puts on our organization. Right? To Simon's point earlier, I need you to halve our costs to run per customer. Because again, we've done great. Well done, the business. You've sold it. You've sold it really well. Oh, holy cow, you've sold it a lot. We actually don't know where we're going to break even, but it's not on the radar, right? We're having to rent more and more VMs. We're having to rent, more and more, Kubernetes cluster, nodes. Lambda. Oh, holy cow, Lambda is costing it. Like, whoops. Okay. Now that's a great problem to have because you've got too many customers, but it is a problem, and you will go bust if you don't solve it. So, dear team, this is an existential threat to our business. We really need you to solve it. And if the team's saying that's nice, but we've still got 1,000-line base controller and we can't change the code, well, them chickens are coming home to roost, aren't they? Right. This one's come up recently as well. I need you to white label our products so we can sell it to other industries. Right. Now, this is a bit more of a long-term thing, but hey, again, if our engineering practices are great, then there is no reason why we can't do this really quite rapidly. Right. If we can't do this really quite rapidly, I need to know because the board needs to know because they need to have at least some kind of say in that strategy. So for all of these, the question to ask is, why can't I do that now? Why can't I have that today? And then what do you need from me so that we can? Thanks all. There you go.